Welcome to The Owl Hoot, a podcast for the environmentally curious, with me, Caroline Norbury. On each episode, I chat with a guest who contributes in some way to protecting the planet on matters of climate change, sustainability, biodiversity, and pollution. Here is a place where you can gain new knowledge and be inspired. Enjoy listening. Harriet Hird joins me on the podcast today. Harriet is Head of Marketing at Zedify, an eco-friendly and sustainable delivery business based in the UK. Prior to working for Zedify, she worked in the realm of recycling and has a degree in anthropology. With logistics being integral to how the world operates, I'm keen to hear how Zedify is tackling this essential service with an environmentally mindful approach. It's my absolute pleasure to welcome Harriet to the podcast. Hello.
Hello, thank you so much for having me on today.
No, the pleasure is all mine. So it would be lovely to start with a little bit about yourself. Did you always think you'd be working in employment where the environment was a factor, and where did that come from?
Yeah, well, I think probably even as a kid, I was quite interested in the environment and environmental issues. But I didn't particularly, seek out in terms of, the course I chose at university or anything like that. But I think it's definitely the background, quite a kind of, politically active family, that kind of thing. And then when I was doing my dissertation, I came across an organisation called Groundwork. I was doing a piece of it was on kind of community gardens and, what nature is like within cities. And Groundwork, yeah, they do some fantastic, very practical projects across the UK. And so really started to kind of understand a bit more about the sector working for them. And I guess it's a bit like that with careers, isn't it? You start with one thing and then it leads to another, and then you end up where you're at. But definitely was something I was passionate about from an early age.
Oh, that's good. You're right. I mean, things you can plan all you like, but quite often life just happens and unfolds, and you either take opportunities that pass your door or you let them go past you. So yeah. That's a good point. Well made. So tell me about Zedify. How did Zedify come about? What's the story behind that, and why was it set up?
So Zedify came about because our two founders, so our CEO, who's Rob King, and our Chief Sustainability Officer, Sam Keane, they both had their own psychologistic businesses. Rob's in Cambridge, but started quite a long time ago in 2005, I believe, and Sam's in Brighton. And they met each other at an event that was organised for psychologistics businesses. And they started chatting, and they thought about the opportunity that was starting to kind of emerge, I guess, where e-commerce was really starting to skyrocket. This is before the pandemic, but even at that stage, really starting to take off. And you're seeing cities really starting to take note about air quality and congestion, and starting to think about taking some serious measures there. And they were both really, really passionate. There's a reason that they started their own businesses, really passionate about, the practical role that deliveries could have in making cities better places. So they decided that they would join forces, make a unified brand, make a tech platform, and try and bring people along for the ride. So we're now in 10 cities across the UK and soon to be in 11. And yeah, we're a mixture of a franchise and managed hub model. So some of them are kind of centrally managed as part of the wider business, and some are kind of individual business owners that operate under Zedify brand.
Interesting. I'm sure we'll come back to that business model a little bit later on, but I wanted to sort of hone in on what this sort of logistic business looks like. So tell me how it compares to a regular, more standard logistics business.
That's a really important, scene setting thing to talk about. I guess, the way that the logistics, market has kind of grown organically over time in the UK is very much, focused as lots of our transport has on motorized vehicles. And so, we've assumed that a van that can do a really good job of transporting stuff efficiently along a motorway can also do a really good job in a city centre. And we've not thought about kind of breaking that down into different parts. So we've ended up in a situation where we've got millions of delivery vans whizzing around cities, really, really choking up those streets. And so, what Zedify does is we have micro hubs that sit on the kind of edge of a city centre, and then retailers and carriers, so big parcel carriers that you might have heard of that we partner with include Yodel and Every. Will drop parcels there, or we'll pick them up and bring them there. And then local businesses as well, their parcels will be picked up and taken there, and those are all consolidated and then delivered within the city on cargo bikes, electric cargo bikes, which are zero emissions at the tailpipe. They're a much kind of smaller delivery vehicle, so really help in terms of the space that they take up on the street, causing less congestion, able to kind of weave around congestion, and generally just really, really help with that, making the city have cleaner air, have a lower carbon footprint from the deliveries, and then help to make the streets kind of safer, more pleasant places for everyone to be.
It has a lot of wins. I can already hear that from the fact that it's solving a problem in terms of the congestion and getting all those extra parcels from A to B, but it's also can be done in a way that really benefits the environment. So tell me then what these vehicles are, because you call them light vehicles, I believe, and you've got a number of different types of e-cargo bikes and other vehicles. Tell me about those a little bit more.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think, people are kind of slowly sort of understanding whether they've, seen them out and about in the street, or maybe they know a family who's kind of got one that they're using for kind of transporting themselves about going and doing their shopping on. But yes, cargo bikes come in lots of different shapes and sizes. And we use that term, I guess, to talk about the whole family of cargo bikes. We have in our fleet, we have two-wheeled cargo bikes, which are kind of really good for nippy, speedy work where we don't have, huge amounts of parcels or huge parcels to deliver. They're really good at kind of getting from A to B really quickly. And then we have larger vehicles, three-wheeled trikes and four-wheeled quads. And we use a variety of makes and models within the fleet profile that we have. But really the backbone of our fleet are the trikes, and they are great because they have they're really nice. They're kind of reliable to use. They have a really big, significant payload, so they can transport about 200 kilograms, which there's a really good bit of research that we often quote because it makes a really good point, which is that a typical van is probably carrying about that weight around, not because it couldn't fit more in the back of it, there's obviously the space and the payload to do that, but because how slowly a van travels around a city, it's only ever going to be able to be filled up, or typically only filled up with about the same weight as a cargo bike. So when you're kind of comparing the two as the kind of what should I use within a city, the fact that you could fit more in a van really isn't in its favor, because you can't actually utilize it.
Wow, that is interesting, something I would not have guessed about.
Yeah.
So you have a mix then. You mentioned there about the maintenance. I wondered how that compared to having, if you had a normal vehicle. Are you having to maintain them in a similar way? Do you have to worry about breakdowns?
I think it's, obviously keeping your fleet on the road and active, and as kind of fully utilized as possible is any logistics business is one of their primary goals, and it's for us absolutely a concern. So we have teams of mechanics in all of our hubs that are doing just that. I think probably quite different kind of tasks that they're doing, but essentially yes, working hard to keep them on the road. Yeah, I don't know specifically how they compare in terms of number of fixes that need to be done on a van compared to a bike.
But yes, that encompasses some of the things that they have to look out for. I get it. And in terms of sourcing these vehicles, has that been because it's fairly new, isn't it? Eco cargo bikes.
Yeah.
Has it been easy to get hold of these, and are they up to the job that you kind of want them to be? Because they need to be fairly robust. You're using them all the time.
Yeah, I think it is really, really good point. It's a really relatively young kind of technology, and so with all kind of new technologies, there are teething issues. There are things that we've tried out and haven't worked, and obviously, like lots of businesses, supply chains, kind of during the pandemic and in the period after Brexit, are affected by us being able to get parts and also vehicles. So all of those things have definitely caused challenges. So I think we have started building and retrofitting our own fleet, and that's all about, ensuring a really robust supply of vehicles that's going to support our growth. That's something that we don't want to be standing in our way, and certainly something that we're kind of laser focused on. I think that also gives us the opportunity to do some quite nice things around sourcing locally and thinking about repurposing parts really effectively.
I think we'll come back to that as well in a moment. Before we do, I was thinking, you mentioned earlier about your customers, and they seem to be quite varied. Are they coming to you because they are thinking they need to be demonstrating their own net zero pathway, or are they coming to you because you provide a great service in terms of just getting that parcel from A to B? What is their motivation?
Yeah, I think you're right. There is a kind of varied mix of customers we have, and I think it does depend a little bit on them and what profile they have. I think often when we're working with a kind of a local, independent retailer in a city, they're interested in us because we are a local team, and they've maybe seen our bikes out and about, and they're thinking, how could I improve things? How could I work with somebody who's like a trusted local provider who can provide me with a really good service? And how could I do things differently? And that might be about sustainability, that might be about clean air, that might be about the impact that has for their customers, seeing their goods being delivered at the doorstep on a cargo bike. So I think a number of those things. I think obviously in these times, price is a really kind of key driver, and people aren't going to make the switch unless they can see that there's that they're either going to be paying a similar amount to what they were for a non-sustainable service, or even in fact kind of saving money based on what they were paying. So that's a really important driver. And one of the ways that we're able to kind of meet that demand is around, the efficiency and the speed and all of that kind of consolidation. So being able to build up a really kind of high density of customers within a certain area, being able to service them really quickly because we're not stuck in traffic, and being able to put all the parcels that are going to a similar area onto one vehicle. I think when you're looking at bigger customers, we work with a real range. We work with mid-sized direct-to-consumer brands who they perhaps have a sustainable product. We work with a vegan recipe kit company called Grubby, and cargo bike deliveries have really been built into their service offering, something that their clients, they've chosen that product because they're really, they're concerned about health, they're concerned about sustainability, and so having a delivery provider that matches that is important. And then when you're looking at big logistics carriers that are partnering with us, they're often dealing with challenges around the cost that for them to deliver within a city. So they partner with us because we can help. We're an experienced cargo bike delivery company, so they know they can rely on us to provide a really efficient service and those gains and really help them there. But I think there is pressure from investors and from their customers as well to address sustainability. And when you're looking at big retail brands, which is a big kind of customer group for us and a big target, and we're working with a big fashion retailer in the UK to do their deliveries, I think there is definitely pressure for big brands to take serious measures looking at their supply chain. And this is something that's kind of beyond criticism. I guess it's a proven model. It's not as complicated as some of aspects of fashion retail where they're looking at product design and all of the different kind of complicated ways that can be constructed and analysed in terms of carbon footprints. But if you're looking at swapping a diesel van for a cargo bike, or even an electric van for a cargo bike, there are really significant carbon savings that you can gain there.
Yeah, that's fascinating, because as you say, fashion, they've got a major headache on their hands in many quarters, and this must be for them one of the least sectors that would feel like an easier win. And so curious that you've got all those different players in there. That in itself it's people coming to the table for different reasons, yet the underlying service is there. They're not coming to you because you're quirky. They come to you for all sorts of reasons. But I imagine, thinking about quirky in a city, people are so used to seeing a white diesel van. It could be anyone's, or I know lots of obviously other deliveries will have their own emblems on their vehicles, but I imagine your vehicles do stand out, and that must help for getting more customers and for selling the whole idea of a sustainable business.
Yeah, I think it's really powerful. And, imagery, it's almost in some ways, for my role is obviously a big part is about communicating that and about getting people excited. And I think, the bikes themselves, we've designed them, so that they look quite striking and so that people kind of do, oh, what's that? And certainly it's that thing at the doorstep where, people, very much used to seeing, very kind of rushed, harassed van driver that's been stuck in traffic. And obviously our riders, working extremely hard. They have really kind of tough targets to hit in terms of deliveries as well, but they are paid a real living wage. They are properly employed. They're not gig economy, and they're out there in the fresh air, able to navigate and filter past traffic rather than get really frustrated, kind of sat in a queue. So there's all of those that contribute to having that really amazing delivery experience at the doorstep that perhaps people aren't used to, and makes it really kind of stand out.
For sure. And I'm curious to know about your staff, particularly those that are, if you like, at the sharp end doing the actual delivering. Have they come from other types of logistics businesses, or are they people that like the whole idea of delivering through a bike or a cargo bike?
Yeah, I think that it's a really interesting question. It's something that we're looking at the moment, actually, in terms of how we can potentially attract a more diverse range of people into the role as we grow, and we're looking to bring more riders on. So I think often we get people that are, they're into cycling. It's something that they enjoy doing in their spare time, and they think, oh, great, I can do a job that's combining that. Perhaps with something else. Perhaps they're a student also, or they're a musician or an artist, or that they have another role that they can kind of balance. I think one of the things that we'd really like to do, and we're looking at ways to, one of the things is, the logistics sector as a whole is very much a kind of male dominated sector. It's not very gender balanced, and one of the things we're really looking to do at the moment is an initiative to try and make the rider positions that we have more widely understood as kind of accessible to people of different ages, to people of different genders. And because they're electric assist vehicles, I mean, they look quite big. And I think speaking to some of our female riders that have started with us, they think, is this something that I'm going to struggle to move around? But after a bit of training, actually, they're really, really easy to kind of maneuver because of the electric assist. You have to be fit to be able to be a Zedify rider, but you don't have to be an Olympian to be able to work for us.
And I hadn't thought about the angle of diverseness. It's a great pivotal point, isn't it? When something new is coming to the marketplace, it's an opportunity to be able to do things differently. And what better way of, as you say, changing the sort of picture of what a delivery driver looks like. Because I can instantly sort of know my local delivery and their drivers themselves, and they're all of us, similar sort of background, if you like. So that's a really interesting challenge that you've got there, and I hope that you can manage to diversify that, because it seems like a good place that you can sort of get in there with that. Good luck. In terms of this business that you have here is creating a service, but is built on this sort of sustainable environmental angle. Is that a thread right through the business, or is that specifically to your sort of transport, your mainstay? I know that is the main body of your work, but I wonder what other sort of initiatives come through the business that reflect that same sustainable feel, if you like.
Yeah, I mean, do you mean, is it beyond the service we offer, and is it how we, is it considered in other aspects of how we operate, or is it more just the mission?
And in terms of your operations on a day-to-day basis, when you buy paper or anything for the business, do you think, right, where has this come from? What kind of business is it? Is it sustainable? Is it FSC paper? That sort of thing. Does it run through the business, or is it just narrowed down to your vehicles?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question, and it's certainly something that I think you mentioned that you might be asking about kind of B Corp, and that is certainly a real kind of wide-ranging process to go through. It really does make you think about all these things, and we are certainly beginning to put the structures in place to make sure that those decisions aren't just kind of at the whim of the individual making the decision that day, but really kind of thinking through. But I think one of the things about Zedify that I was just delighted about when I first joined is that I think because it's this purpose-led organisation and everything we do, you know, that's what the founders talk about. They talk about creating better cities, and, you know, a lot of the people that have come on board have really got inspired by that. And, you know, so the people that have come here really, really do want to make a difference. And yes, totally understand the importance of us not just making a service that helps other people to improve their sustainability, but thinking about every choice that we make. So, you know, I run events. So when we're buying, you know, merchandise for those events, we're looking at leaflets and we're looking at what can we make that's digital instead of, you know, paper, which suppliers can we work with to source things that can be reusable. It's about the impression that it gives, but it's totally about the impact that we're having as well. Sourcing uniforms as well. How can we make sure that the garments that we're buying have been, you know, produced ethically? How can we make sure that the impact of the materials that have been used to create those are, you know, as lower profile as possible? All of those things are definitely considerations. I think B Corp is going to help us formalise that.
Yeah, and just to reflect to those that have never heard of B Corp, what does it mean to you, and where are you on that journey?
Yeah, I think it's just a really, really well-regarded mark of how serious you are about ethics and the people on the planet. And I think, you know, it's this phrase about business can be a force for good. And that is totally written into the DNA of Zedify and, you know, the founders and everyone that works here. But I think it's that kind of outside authentication of that. And people know that it's quite a tough thing to achieve and a tough process to go through. So it's got a really kind of, you know, it's got a really good reputation. It's that seal of approval. So I think for us, it's that, and about becoming part of the community of other B Corp businesses as well, and kind of sharing the journey that we're on with those businesses.
I think it can be really difficult when you're trying to make the whole business sustainable, because you have to rely on your supply chains, and everything is not always as easy as, it's not always on offer what you want to choose. So I think doing a B Corp, as you rightly say, is quite an interesting challenge in itself. So it sounds like you're measuring your impacts. Is that because of the B Corp, or is that because you want to be able to demonstrate, because you clearly are a sustainable business, but is it in that you need to demonstrate to others what your impact is?
Yeah, so I think there's kind of two sides to it. One is being able to really explain and tell the story properly about how our service compares and the impact of our service, so that we can, you know, people can kind of really understand what the emission savings is going to be per parcel or per kilometre, and they can, you know, build that in and really kind of get value from working with us. And that's a really important part. And being able to, we've spent quite a lot of time this year building out an impact report that does just that. And, you know, we've used mileage data from our trackers. We've used lots of kind of different sources for data to be able to build out what the impact is, and looked at kind of embodied emissions from all of the different vehicles, and then operating emissions as well. And it's a really nice way to be able to show that story, and you get some interesting stuff about, you know, the difference between EVs and diesel vans, and actually the difference between EVs and cargo bikes. And I think that's one of the things that people are quite surprised by, because the embodied emissions are so high from an electric van. You get a really massive difference between EVs and cargo bikes per kilometre. It's about a 96% saving, which is dramatic. And between cargo bikes and diesel vans, it's 350 grams per kilometre carbon. So yeah, it's a really important story to tell. But yes, on our own side, we have started to look at that. I think partly because it's something that all businesses need to do. You need to understand, you know, your impact. I think operating our fleet, kind of our operating emissions, are really, really quite low. I think the information that Sam, our Chief Sustainability Officer, shared with me before this call was that it's about a gram per task delivered. And we're looking at the kind of full life cycle, which looks at the emissions of our fleet, embodied carbon and operating emissions. But when we look at our own kind of reporting, we are it does get a little bit complex because of how many cities and our franchise model as well. So access to data is a little bit of a challenge there, and that's what we're trying to address on our kind of B Corp journey.
Yeah, so I can see how it would be complicated having the sort of business model that you're operating on being twofold, that you have sort of complete control of what's in your initial basket, but the additional add-ons to your expansion model. How's that come about, the franchising, and is it doing what you hoped it would do?
Yeah, I think it's really important for us to be able to have a mix. So, the franchise cities where we work, it's the people that run those businesses are just brilliant. They're so committed to making Zedify and their city a success. And I think that is a real power from the franchise model, and it's been really, really important for us. I think where we now think we've got a really speedy growth plan over the next 12 to 18 months, which is backed by the recent funding that we got, including funding from Barclays, and it totaled 5 million. It's really, really exciting what that's going to be able to do, but we need to be able to kind of switch on cities really, really quickly. And to be able to do that quickly, often the kind of managed approach works slightly better, because you're kind of hiring somebody rather than finding somebody that has capital to invest and wants to take on that risk. So I think it's a different approach for kind of different times within the business's growth.
So how many cities are you in now, and how many do you hope to be in?
Yeah, so next on the list is Manchester. So we're just about to get the keys for our hub in Manchester, which is really exciting. And launch plan all kind of set in place for us to shout about that very soon, which will be great. And next, we also have Birmingham in our sights, and other cities kind of including Nottingham, Leeds, Bath and Oxford are all kind of in the sights for launching and rolling out over the coming 12 to 18 months, which is really exciting. We're in 10 cities currently, and it will be 11 when we're in Manchester too.
I'm curious, because obviously Manchester is a really big city.
Yeah.
Why has it not been chosen sooner? Or did you want to make sure that you're getting it right elsewhere before you launch yourself in another big place?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think it's certainly somewhere which has been, in our sights for a while. It's a really, really good place, kind of strategically, because we work with lots of big retailers. Often, there's a big kind of hub of distribution centres in the Northwest. And so, being in that area and being able to build out, one of the things that we're looking to build out at the moment is a kind of trunking network that is able to transport. So we're able to kind of collect volumes of parcels from distribution hubs and then bringing them to the city. So, it's a much more kind of attractive proposition for a big retailer. And if we can make that part of the delivery journey as sustainable as possible, then that works really well. So Manchester, definitely a key post. I think partly it's been to do with why not until now. Partly it's been to do with opportunities to expand. So Bristol, we actually had that was part of we tendered for a council funding pot to launch a consolidation hub in Bristol. So there was a really good kind of opportunity there. They were preparing for their clean air zone launch, which did go live, and putting us in place was part of them making sure that they were well set up for that, and that businesses had what they needed to keep running in the city with the new restrictions in place.
Yeah, I mean, I guess from hearing you talk about that, each city is going to have its own different nuances, and it's going to be, you have to adapt to how it looks, how the amount of traffic there is and demand. Of course, there are a lot of their things to think about in choosing a city. Is there any way you think, no, this won't work?
I guess what we've learned is that there needs to be a density, and I guess there are challenges in cities where the kind of end customers, the people that we're delivering to doorsteps, are very kind of spread out. Not insurmountable challenges, often that may require just having multiple hubs in different areas to be able to service them. And I think there are definitely there are things that perhaps make a city succeed more quickly than others. things like old kind of historical cities where there's lots of access restrictions, and that's an immediate advantage for bikes kind of being able to get around those streets really kind of quickly and easily. And then business cities where there's a really kind of vibrant community of independent retailers seems to work really well, because there's that they tend to have more control over their kind of deliveries, and perhaps slightly more to gain kind of initially from working with somebody like Zedify in terms of the fit with their brand and that kind of thing. So perhaps more motivated to do so.
For sure. Yeah, I get that. And in terms of challenges, what is the most difficult thing that you have to face, or is it just a series of small challenges, just in terms of operations? Are there big challenges that you feel that you've still got to overcome, or is it just day-to-day stuff?
Yeah, I think there's still a big kind of communications challenge that we have. There are, I think when you're looking at kind of one of the, the biggest kind of target markets that we've got, which is, retail, and kind of specifically, I guess, fashion retail, where, a huge amount of the e-commerce deliveries that are happening within the UK are kind of because of, what we spend as consumers on fashion. Their consumers say things like, I'm going to make sustainable choices, and, yes, I'd prefer a sustainable delivery company. But there's that whole, very well documented say do gap. And so retailers there's an opportunity there for them to be able to do things slightly differently, but there's not a heated pressure as there has been on certain things like, packaging, and then kind of ethical labor and fair labor, that kind of thing. And so I guess we're waiting a little bit for that moment to happen, and trying to ourselves kind of educate consumers about the impact that deliveries have. It's that kind of thing that it's a little bit tricky to communicate sometimes. Things like air quality, it's there, but it's unseen, and it's something that we're all experiencing. But it's difficult, maybe like lots of things with the environmental and sustainability movements, climate change. It's like, how is the pressure right there in front of me, and am I prepared to kind of make a different choice because of that, the impact that would have? But there is certainly pressure from kind of investors and at the kind of corporate level in terms of being seen to make serious steps. So I think there's certainly something there that big retailers are kind of thinking, okay, I need to do something about this, and this is a solution that can help me.
Yeah, and I think you offer something quite practical and tangible and relatively straightforward to get part of a supply chain in order. So I imagine, I can see now from what you've just said that actually that end is already on the movement, but it's that end user who's got to also be going, yeah, this is how I want my thick parcels to come to my door. And I think, as you rightly say, that's a moment in time, but I think that's coming. And I think the more visible it is, and the connection to, as you say, air quality, people can't see, but those people that have any respiratory issues, they don't need to see it to know that they're living in a city that's got poor quality. And if they can just connect some of those dots with my respiratory issue, maybe asthma or whatever it is, with all those horrible vehicles on my doorstep, and then there's a different alternative, then you've got something there.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's just, yeah, exactly, it's about it's that point, it's things like people at the moment, one of the things that is a real opportunity, I guess, is providing visibility through technology. When you're at the checkout, you often have choices about how you want things to be delivered. And, that's usually about speed. And I think one of the important things to get across is, choosing to have deliveries made by a company like Zedify doesn't mean having to sacrifice speed. It's very much, it has to be that too. But I think being able to kind of provide that choice for customers, like, here you can have your products delivered by cargo bike, and it's giving that visibility. And then perhaps they see that at the doorstep, or they get some information in their delivery notification, and it's just what that does, knowing that there's that need there, what that does for a brand in terms of appealing to the customer and becoming a kind of a loyal follower of their brand, because they're making those kind of significant choices about choosing more sustainable approaches.
That's going to be very interesting to watch. I look forward to seeing those pop-ups that go, do you want the sustainable bike? Yay! Of course. As I bring this conversation to a close, and it's been fascinating listening to you, Harry, I wonder what your own personal thoughts and feelings are about the sort of the future of logistics and how it's sort of perhaps impacted your own life in terms of thinking about these sort of carbon emissions, air quality. Are you hopeful of the future? What does the future look like to you?
Yeah, I think I'm really amazed by, since I've just over 2 years, I think I worked at Zedify, and when I joined, I couldn't have told you that Amazon would be heavily investing in cargo bike logistics, and that all these big kind of carriers would be like choosing cargo bike logistics. I think IKEA have just announced that they're going to roll out cargo bike logistics, so it's becoming a real thing that people understand as this is the way that I can address this problem now. This is serious. This isn't just a kind of weird side issue. This is something that can help me. And so I think that's really promising, and obviously really hope that continues. I think it's logistics has to change kind of in step, be there to support the change that businesses are going to go through as they completely redesign their business models and perhaps transition to subscription models and sharing economies and reuse and all of those things. I think we're still going to need stuff delivered, and it still needs to be delivered in the most sustainable way, but we need to kind of build that and bake it in now and make sure it's there to kind of support these new, more circular approaches to business.
That sounds very, very hopeful, and I think you're in the right place at the right time. I think. I hope it all goes. The expansion projects go really, really well. I'm sure they will, and it's been absolutely fabulous talking to you this afternoon.
Oh, thank you so much, Caroline. Great to be on.
I found my conversation with Harry compelling. The image of nifty e-cargo bikes delivering packages in a city with less congestion and better air quality is certainly appealing. It makes a lot of sense to power these city journeys with electricity and cut logistic-related emissions. It was intriguing to hear how varied Zedify's customers were and how those receiving goods are yet to exert demand for more sustainable deliveries. Personally, I can't wait to see the appearance of a sustainable delivery option when purchasing online. If you want to discover more information about Zedify, take a look at the website link in the show notes. In producing this episode, I'd like to thank Andy Shaw for audio editing, Jeremy Jones for providing the music, and you for listening. Don't forget you can follow the podcast to get automatic access to each new episode. And it would be lovely if you could rate, review, and share it too. It really helps. Until next time, bye for now.